talk about reports, you should have watched the video about queries because reports are all based on queries. You can't run a report without a query. So the first thing we want to do is to create a new folder or new category. This is where you'll want to store your reports. So I'm going to call this, since I'm logged in as a user called Hudson Taylor, I'm going to call it Taylor Reports. And I'm going to make it private so no one else can see my reports and save that category. So now we have this Taylor Reports. I'm going to add a new report. In this new report, I don't really need to make private because it's in a folder that's private or a category that's private, so no one can see it anyway. And let's do something that's, I think, one of the most common reports that's most helpful to you is gifts by year. Reports are more sophisticated than queries. Queries have a lot of capabilities. You can add whatever columns you want. You can print out PDF reports of the query and make nice column-like reports. But reports have more capability in that you can do some summing up, collapsing of things, and do some math and more sophisticated type of reports than the report you get out of a query. So in this case, we're going to look at all of our gifts, but we're going to sort them by year and also by donor. So I'm calling it that. And under this group result, we're going to group them by account. So we want to group all the gifts by an account. So if a donor has given us 10 different gifts, we want it grouped together. And we want to collapse the group. So if they've given 10 gifts, we don't want to see 10 lines. We just want to see it collapse down into one total. And now we get down to report columns. These are what columns you want to report. If I would save and run this now, it wouldn't show anything because we haven't asked for any data to be displayed in the report. There is a preview layout, and preview layout would probably show a blank report here. Actually doesn't show anything because it knows you haven't picked anything. So some of the things you might want is an account name. You could pick first name, last name. If you don't see what you want on this list, we're only looking at data that's in the database that are what's considered commonly used. If you would look at account fields, you would see address, country, emails, middle name, last name. So you could put a last name and a first name in a report, but I'm just going to put account name because that normally, unless it's a business account, puts the last name and first name anyway. And if it's a business account, it puts the business name. So that's important to have in there. And then the other thing is a field. It's under the commonly used ones. It's actually called received. Don't get fooled by date and put that in because we actually, this received one are gifts that were received on a particular date. So this is like a transaction sort of date. And when you hit those three dots, it will expand it. And we can, this aggregate, what that means is it's going to group things according to this criteria. You can group them with this max min, year to date, all kinds of things. But in this case, I'm going to pick year to date. So for the first column in the report, I'm going to have the account name. For the next column, I'm going to have year to date. And I can change the column heading here and call this 2020 because year to date would be for year 2020. And now let's add another received one here. And actually, let's add about three more, 19, 18, and 17. So this we're going to call 2019, and that would be 1 year ago. So 1 year ago would be 2019. And in here, we're going to call this 2018, and that would be 2 years ago. And this last one here, we're going to call 2017. And this one would be 3 years ago. So we have 3 years ago, 2 years ago, 1 year ago, and year to date. So those are going to be columns in my report. So, and in my report, it's going to group by accounts, so by the donors, and then it's going to collapse all their gifts down into just one number, and we're going to have these columns in the report of each year. So I'm going to save this. And now the report is really done. And I could run this report now. And when you run a report, it's got to be based on a query. So remember, this is some comprehensive report of all of our gifts. So the category, we're going to look for a query that we've created before. And we have a query called all my gifts. So that's going to be all the gifts. So that's what we would want. We wouldn't want just year to date, or it wouldn't be able to display the 2018, 17, or 16 gifts. So this query are all my gifts, and we're just going to take the defaults on everything, and we can display it to the screen, or we can have it either, let's see, I can display the results to the screen, or I can have it emailed as a PDF file, emailed as a Excel file or CVS file, for example. And then you'd put in whatever delivery email you want. But I'm going to display it on the screen because this runs pretty fast. If it was a complicated report, you had a lot of donations, it might run a little slowly, so you'd want to just email it to you when it's done. Now you can see here are all my donors, and you can see how much I gave in each year. And this, let's take this guy, John Glenn, for example. He gave nothing this year. It says 9,019, 318. So let's just click on him. Let's look at his entries. So there's nothing in 2020 this year, but there are 3 gifts in 19, 3, 6, 900. And in 18, there's a $300 gift. So that's why it showed $900 in last year, in the year before that, $300. So this report, I can now save it as a PDF and download it and export it here. If it's a big file, I can zip it. Now I have a nice report in a PDF format, or I can have it in an Excel format if I want. So that's a custom report, and there's a lot of capabilities with reports. But let me show you some built-in reports, standard reports. Here, let's say top donor report. We're going to look at Taylor queries, all my donors. Just submit, and we see 1, 2, 3, the top donors. These two were actually both gave 1,000. So they're both ranked number 4 because they were both 1,000. There's some other reports in here. There's this report, online journal entries, is a nice report to run if you want to see all your online giving. I don't have any for this test account, so it wouldn't show anything. There's consecutive year report. We could say, let's look at all of my donors, and let's see what donors have given 2 years in the last 4 years. And I can say they need to be consecutive, or gifts may be any time within a certain range. But in this case, I'm just going to say there's who's given 2 consecutive years in the past 4. And when I submit this here, I see these 3 donors have given 2 consecutive years in the last 4. If we pull up this guy here, he's given in 18, he's given in 19. So he's given 2 consecutive years. So that's a report you may find useful. There's a account summary report that will go through all your donors, give you a summary of all their accounts. So I'll just say all the donors, display on the screen. And now it goes one by one. Here's the first one. It shows how much was received last year, lifetime, um, shows address, I guess is at the top here, shows the little plot. So you may find a report like this would be useful. So there are some standard reports, um, but you'll probably find it most helpful to do custom reports. And again, those are going to be stored in whatever category you set up. Make sure you group them here and don't store them just somewhere else. Store them under your particular category or folder. And then anytime you want to run them, you'll see them here. And if you make it a favorite, um, if I take this and say I want to make this a favorite report and save it, then it will show up on my home screen. So go home. And favorite reports, here's under the category called Taylor Reports, gifts by year. If I click on that, it drops me into here and I can say save and run. And I have to pick a query to base this report on. So I want all my donors. And if I click this right here, it will remember that query the next time I run it, so I won't have to pick it. It'll save the query with the report. So, and here it is right here. So now if I went back home again and ran that from this front page here, gifts by year, as a recent report or as a favorite, just say save and run. The query is already set for me, so all I have to do is hit submit. So that's all I want to say about reports, but there's a lot more you can learn on reports. And remember, you can type help here and type reports, and you can find lots of different help in here on reports. Standard reports, and a lot of information on some of the standard reports that are built in or how to make your own reports. Okay, this concludes this video.